including SpiceJet. Bidders expected to formally submit expression of interest in the next few days. And dense fog causes travel chaos in Delhi. 150 flights delayed. Some 100 flights are diverted. A natural phenomena or airline management, we find out. Tracking all those stories here on News 9. I'm Shweta. Kothari, with me is Kartik Malhotra. Hi Kartik, a very good morning.
Morning to you.
The biggest story that we are tracking at this hour comes on the back of China's slowing economy and hence slowing exports to the US. It is a number game that is playing out here by China is set to lose the crown of the top US exporter for the first time in 17 years, and perhaps the biggest exporter in the world. India is somehow creeping in and winning that space.
So India is actually literally winning that space if you look at data from 2023, definitely in the smartphone category.
Okay.
And that is one category where we have really been able to box China straight in the nose and get it to bleed. But apart from that, there are many other players who've also emerged. Now, let's go back and understand where this problem really started from. It started actually right in the midst of COVID, where China had the most stringent lockdown anywhere in the world. Now, thanks to all the ghost factories that were there in China and no workers really allowed to go into factories, operations taking longer than any other country to restart, it really disrupted the supply chains across the world. Now, this happened at a time when Vietnam, Mexico, India, many other players in the emerging market stack had already opened their economies ahead of China and had become decent alternatives to China when it came to global supply chains and global exports, not just to the US but anywhere in the world. Now, what has really emerged from the 2023 data is that despite China's zero COVID policy ending in December 2022, the entire 1 year thereafter has not really seen the kind of pickup which the world expected. And then those, theories of China plus one began to emerge. And who would be the plus one in a China plus one world? And that plus one right now is definitely India when it comes to smartphones. India's overall electronics exports, in addition to smartphones, have also doubled. While smartphones have gone up about 5 times, overall electronics exports from India have doubled in the Jan to September period. Now look at Vietnam. Vietnam has emerged as the most obvious next bet or the most important emerging market when it comes to IT hardware, laptops, tablets, all of those devices, right? PCs, computers, servers. So Vietnam has emerged as the leading exporter when it comes to overall IT hardware.
Okay.
And interestingly, US, which really dependent on China all this while for all its imports,
Is now looking to Mexico.
has actually already looked at Mexico, and Mexico is able to provide petroleum, engineering equipment, electricals, all of those, and that has, in fact, Mexico has become the #1 exporter to US, really pipping China by leaps and bounds.
Absolutely. And so while the data, is very interesting when you look at it from India perspective, I have 2 questions at the moment. First, is a slowdown in China good for global growth? Because economists are of the view that if the slowdown continues in China, it will have, repercussions for the rest of the world's economic growth,
Right.
which is expected to decelerate to the point of 2.9% in 2025. So a slowdown in China will have an impact on the rest of the world. It may not be a good sign or a good indicator as otherwise expected.
Right. So I think any economy, any large economy slowing down overall is bad news. I mean, we may take a very, very patriotic view and believe that, China slowing down is a great opportunity for India. No doubt it is. But remember that China is not just an exporter. China is also a consumer.
Consumer.
It's a
Absolutely.
consumer. So in the absence of any other equally large economy growing at least at double the rate of China slowed down to mitigate the impact of China slowing down is overall bad news for the world, because it is a consumption base. Whether you look at any sort of automobiles to real estate, which was the largest sector
Energy,
in China,
fuel.
energy, petroleum products, any product out there, China with 1.4 billion people equal to India is also a large consumer market. So China slowing down overall as an economy is bad news for the world. But it obviously is also an opportunity for other emerging markets, including India, including Thailand, including Vietnam, including Mexico, including Brazil, including South Africa, to really up their game when it comes to their overall share in world exports. And that is an opportunity which the world is beginning to seize. And data coming for the year of 2023 is clearly indicating that US, which was the largest importer of Chinese products, has actually dipped its its imports from China up to 20%. Incidentally, even US exports to China have gone down. But that hasn't happened only on the back of China slowing down, but there's a larger AI story and an AI race which is playing out over there.
And before we go to AI race, what does it really mean for India? Where does India feature in this scheme of things, if you may ask? The China plus one strategy that you alluded to, the story is becoming bigger here, not just in electronic space, which is where India is, of course, taking the first leap, but in other sectors as well, which have been now vacated by China.
Right. So I think what it typically means for India is that, I think the government of India has already said that it is going to reevaluate its ban on importing IT hardware to give India-made IT hardware a real impetus, a real push, and the government then rolled back on that later in 2023. Now, that policy is up for a relook right now as we speak. So once that happens, I think India will be able to decide whether it wants to restrict, control, or really ebb down its imports of IT hardware, which is a growing sector in India. India importing about 8 billion worth of IT hardware, if the numbers serve me right. So that is a big sort of question mark right now. What should India do? Secondly, India's overall cutback on Chinese investments coming into India is obviously, it serves a double advantage. One advantage being that you continue to hurt China economically, and second, you try and bolster or you try and meet up the numbers of that large demand from self-made Indian goods, right? But I think the bigger story there is also about PLI. India has been trying to incentivize manufacturing in the country for critical, goods which India wants to produce and wants to be self-reliant in, whether it is semiconductors, whether it is defense, whether it is artificial intelligence, automobiles, etc. So we really want to encourage industry to, loosen its purse strings, invest in the country, take advantage of the PLI sector. All of this is likely to play in favor of India if China continues to be sort of, this big bully out there that the world does not want to do business with.
And
so it'll do well for India.
Absolutely.
But that is not the only thing India should bank on. Given the fact that almost 40% of the world is into election season this year. In fact, our neighbors Bangladesh and Taiwan have already concluded elections. India is up for elections later in the year. US goes for elections. So overall, with regime changes across the world and a potential change of guard in the US, the equation with China vis-a-vis the rest of the world could change. So that should not be the only factor India should keep in mind to bolster its own manufacturing initiatives.
Right. And while we are on the geopolitical changing circumstances in our neighboring economies and neighboring democracies, Taiwan went for election. The National Democratic Progressive Party has come back for the third time consecutively. The president, the ruling president, the vice president, who's now going to be the president, is anti-China. What does it really mean for the geopolitics playing out in Asia?
Actually, Shweta, I think that is one of the most interesting developing stories in 2024, and the ground for that has been set right in the month of Jan 2024. So William Lai has come or is likely to now take charge as president. He's the president-elect. He's likely to take charge of the country of Taiwan as the president. And it comes obviously at a time when he is seen by China as a separatist leader. He's seen as, from China's point of view, as a danger. And in fact, China has gone on record multiple times to call him a severe danger to relationships between Taiwan and China. Now, what is this relationship really hinging on? We touched upon it previously as well, and I think it's important to delve a little deeper into it right now. The real race in the world right now, economically, is on AI.
And semiconductors.
Semiconductors become the bedrock of any development in artificial intelligence. And Taiwan's TSMC is the world's largest semiconductor producer. Now, at one point, William Lai and the Democratic Progressive Party in Taiwan is seen as somebody who will stand up to this bully in the region called China and is really banking right now on support from the US, which has equal interest in semiconductors as China does, and is really hoping that if this flashpoint were to really grow into a real tremor in the region, and if Taiwan Strait was to come under attack by Taiwan, then US would come to its rescue. And with William Lai taking charge as president of Taiwan, the sort sort of, the irking going down China's route and the kind of, incentive or trigger China has to really go ahead and take extended military action in Taiwan Strait becomes even more pronounced. Now, if that were to happen, if it happens before November 2024, when US goes into elections, is Taiwan going to be foolhardy in believing that US is actually going to marshal in troops and marshal in its own resources to help Taiwan in a battle-like scenario?
Absolutely, and it's also incumbent upon who comes back to power.
Absolutely.
If whether the ruling party in US will come back to power.
Pre-November, will the current dispensation in US want to participate in an active conflict in Asia, right? And there are 2 active wars already in the world. Let's not be warmongers here, but then the possibility of this flashpoint really triggering into something which is far more military action oriented in nature is definitely a stronger possibility now than it was pre-Taiwan elections. Post November 2024, when there is elections in the US, and if there is a change of guard in US, and if Trump was to come back to power, then can Taiwan really count on its support from the US? Because Trump coming to power is going to change geopolitics and geoeconomics in Asia like never before.
Absolutely.
And there's a great likelihood that Trump will have pro-China policies, will prefer China over any other player in this region. And if that were to happen, then Taiwan obviously becomes very, very dangerously threatened by China.
And the eventuality of military presence, extended military action on Taiwan essentially also means not just the sovereignty of Taiwanese people, which will take a beating, but also overall in the world, we could be staring at another war-like situation or a violent conflict for that matter.
And I think the common interest between US and China in Taiwan happens to be semiconductors. And that is not a crown that Taiwan is likely to lose to anybody in the future.
Absolutely.
And US and China presently under Biden have this whole AI tech war on right now, where US doesn't want China to get access to its semiconductors and its chips that run AI. And parallelly, China continues to be dependent on the semiconductors made in Taiwan and in other parts of the world. How this equation is going to change pre-November 2024 and post-November 2024 is something that the world will eagerly await to watch.
But as of January of this year, Taiwan, which has had a change of regime with William Lai or Lai Ching-te, he's popularly known as, is taking over as the president of Taiwan. Very, very soon, he is anti-China, or his policies are anti-China or presumed to be likely so. Will Chinese government stay with and await for more developments to take place, and what is likely to be the Chinese-Taiwanese relationship going forward? I think that would be a major flashpoint for Asia this year. We'll keep bringing all those details to you, but after this very short break.
Yes, the scale of the attack surprised us.
When you get a series of alerts, 16 intelligence alerts, if Maharashtra government at that time had alerted the Coast Guard and the Navy, this 2611 would not have happened at all.
And one of the details they had planned was to use these dhagas to mislead the investigative agencies.
All this was to be presented as a Hindu terror.
So it was a Pakistan operation. The LET was the front end.
As the attacks were on, it was clear that they were planned and launched from Pakistani territory.
For all of those victims of terror that was exported from Pakistan over the years, including but not limited to 2611.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
And the state has not been able to handle that part of its own responsibilities.
It's not the fiefdom of politicians. They owe it to the people.
Everybody is as good a citizen as we.
As a Telangana person, I will not accept his leadership.
What was worrying was the stories that were coming from the Congress that there was internal sabotage.
You can't straight away give 12%. There is no provision.
Exactly.
You need to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, just because they are tribal, everyone does it.
Wait.
That's my problem. How do ordinary folks deal with this? Think about it.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News 9 Live.
Welcome back. Infosys, one of the leading IT players in the country, is all set to make its semiconductor foray through a firm that it has now acquired for 280 crore rupees. Insemi. What is Insemi would bring to the table essentially is to realize Infosys's dreams of becoming a chip maker very soon. Is Infosys finally getting into chip making or chip design making? What's in the future?
So I think, Shweta, early 2023 onwards, we saw that overall in Indian IT, the real new reason for growth happened to become AI, and at a time when the US order books into Indian IT companies were slowing down, overall what was really growing as a category was artificial intelligence. And every Indian IT company from TCS to Wipro to Infosys to HCL Tech, they've all in their own ways, all of 2023 announced their own foray into artificial intelligence. And they know for a fact that any sort of servicing they'll have to do in an environment where cost constraints are rampant, in an environment where technology across the world is growing with the help of AI and AI-driven solutions and connected devices and self-driving automation, cars, etc. Everywhere the whole central theme is around AI, and driven on the back of AI is this whole boost in semiconductors. Now, what is Insemi and the acquisition, and what does it really mean? I believe Infosys is definitely not going to go into manufacturing or production of semiconductors. However, Insemi specializes in the designing of semiconductor fabs, in electronics design as an overall product portfolio mix. And that is something which serves as a great tool for Infosys to offer to its clients in India as well as abroad. So overall, with the acquisition of Insemi, there are design-based electronic designs, fab design-based solutions that Infosys would want to ride on as part of its overall back-end IT services which it offers to clients globally. Now, obviously, this also comes at a time when overall there is a semiconductor boost and a push from the government and from private players domestically and internationally. In fact, in Vibrant Gujarat itself, we heard that Micron is likely to have its fab production roll out as early as 2025. We've heard from N. Chandra of Tata Sons that Tata is looking into investing into semiconductors. Now, these semiconductors standalone would not mean much because then it is just a simple manufacturing. Of course, on the basis of some critical minerals which require to be mined and go into the assembly process. But overall, solutions that need to be provided when it comes to connected technologies, connected devices, electronics design, AI-driven solutions which will work on very, very specific chips, which will need very, very specialized, semiconductor fabs as the base layer on which the GPUs are going to operate. Okay. All this becomes very, very central to any sort of AI-driven service that you want to provide as a solution to clients abroad. And that is the investment that Infosys is now making. I think a 280 crore rupee investment, which is incidentally just double of the revenue made by Insemi. So it's actually acquired in Semi at just 2x of its revenue. So it seems like a good sort of a well-priced acquisition which Infosys is making, and really repositioning itself as not just a back-end low-cost service provider operating out of India, but as a specialized service provider which can offer AI-driven solutions, and those AI-driven solutions on very, very specific semiconductors which drive the AI automation.
All right. So perhaps Infosys now finally getting into designing and packaging bit in order to ensure that the semiconductor ecosystem that India is likely to develop can be harnessed on.
So I think, yeah, it is betting on the fact that the semiconductor manufacturing is going to take off in India, and there can be custom manufacturing for custom solutions by way of the design that goes into designing of those fabs, and that comes by way of its acquisition of
its custom customers, perhaps.
Absolutely.
So that is Infosys's bid, of course, to get into the semiconductor ecosystem by the way of designing and packaging. But shifting focus to an industry we closely track, and that is the aviation space, Go First is likely to have now extended its deadline for its new bidders to January 31st. This in order to accommodate potential bidders who have shown interest but have not officially made their bid. The expression of interest has come in from a variety of players, including SpiceJet, but an official bidding has to be made. And these bidders now have time till 31st of January to do so.
So, Shweta, unfortunately, there's always a slip between the cup and the lip when it comes to acquiring large grounded airlines, right? We've seen that in the case of Jet. Absolutely. We've seen that in the case of Kingfisher. We are seeing that unfold also in the case of Go First. And let's hope that for the sake of the Indian aviation sector, 31st Jan happens to be a date when we see some action which is contrary to the more logical liquidation of Go First. Now, who are the players right now in the fray? Of course, you mentioned SpiceJet. So SpiceJet, which in itself is struggling with a fundraise, while it has promised that it will start operations into Lakshadweep and into Ayodhya, riding on this whole wave right now of of a nationalistic travel destination. In fact, 2 nationalistic travel destinations, but it doesn't have the money yet to do it. So it is looking to raise about 2,500 odd crore rupees. Now, in addition to that, if it really seriously wants to contemplate making a bid on Go First, it needs investors of its own. So if it has investors and if it has that fund infusion in place, I think it can officially make a bid. If it doesn't have investors and if that fundraise continues to be elusive, then I think it's going to be difficult for SpiceJet to formally make a bid to acquire Go First.
But there are 3 other bidders.
Absolutely, there are 3 others. So this is, as far as SpiceJet, a very, very logical extension into the airline's India operations by way of Go First. But the only thing elusive right now is money. So if it doesn't have money, how does it go and make an official bid? So this is SpiceJet. In addition to that, you've got Safric, you've got Sky1, and you've got now a US-based company called NS Aviation. These 3 players have the money. Some of them have the expertise, some of them don't have the expertise to operate airlines in India. But what is it that money can't buy? It can definitely buy you a CEO, and it can buy you some experts who can run the airline for you. So if it does want to look at the Indian sky seriously, then Safric, Sky1, NS Aviation, these are the 3 other players. But 31st Jan is the deadline to submit bids. Now, I'm not sure if an official expression of interest by all 4 of these players has been made or not, NS Aviation being the latest one reported by Reuters, which has entered the fray. So I think it could be an EOI just to look into the books of Go First, try and understand, is the aviation space lucrative at all? What is the kind of asset value lying with Go First? Because earlier reports in the month of November, if I'm not mistaken, indicated that if Go First were to go the liquidation way, and remember the committee of creditors, which has some large banks in India, refused to infuse the additional 600 odd crore rupees, and Go First owes its lenders as much as 6,500 crore rupees. What it owes to its lessors is actually much higher at almost 20,000 crore rupees. But if Go First were to go the complete liquidation route, then all that IBC may be able to extract from the sale of or from the liquidation of Go First would be no more than about 2,000 crore rupees. So liquidation for lenders is a bad idea because it needs to recover 6,500 crore rupees. With liquidation, it will only be able to recover about 2,000 crore rupees. So it continues to take a beating on its chin when it comes to its own bad loans. So, and that is not something that they would want to, entertain at this moment. So I think this new extension of 31st Jan is something that lenders would really hope comes out in some sort of a formal bid and
a possible breakthrough,
and a bid which is upwards of maybe 6,500 crore rupees to keep the lenders happy. And then, of course, there will need to be a lot more fund infusion to pay the lessors for whatever has been due to them ever since the airline got grounded on the 2nd of May last year.
All right, which approximately been about 7 to 8 months since the airline was grounded.
Yeah, about 9 months.
About 9 months or so now. 31st of January. That is the timeline we're looking at as far as a Go First's revival is concerned. If it doesn't happen by then, perhaps liquidation seems like an eventuality. But staying on with the aviation sector and staying on with what's happening as far as the dense fog causing travel chaos in Delhi is concerned. As of this morning, 150 flights were delayed, over 100 flights were diverted. I think the big question that everybody's asking, and we've seen visuals of people who are stranded in Aerobridge at their hotels, at airports. The question that everybody
and getting diverted to Bangladesh and sitting in an aircraft on the runway in Bangladesh without a visa.
And hours.
Yes.
And so the question I think everybody's asking today is that, is this a natural phenomena? Is it a problem with the weather, or is it a problem with the airlines? Can there be better management, and who's paying the ultimate price of it?
So I think at the end of the day, to answer your first two questions, is it a problem, is it a natural phenomena, or is it a technical staffing stroke management problem? I think it's at the cusp of both. Fog obviously is a natural phenomena,
you can't control it.
But then fog, anticipation of fog is what the Met departments are in for, and airlines, pilots, everybody across the entire aviation space is aware of these conditions. And to fly in these conditions, you need certain specialized equipment on board aircraft, which most Indian aircraft, large carriers definitely have, which are the Cat 2 or the Cat 3, flying equipment on board these aircraft. And then you need pilots who understand those instruments and are able to fly and land safely by looking at those instruments and of course with their overall experience. Now, my sources in certain airlines have told me that as many as 50 to 60% of pilots flying any commercial airline aircrafts are trained with Cat 2 and Cat 3 expertise. So if they have these expertise resident with them, and the fact that every aircraft has 2 pilots, even if one of them is Cat 2 or Cat 3 compliant and the other pilot is not, it pretty much means that every aircraft out there can be flown technically with one Cat trained pilot who can safely land the aircraft. Now, DGCA in the month of December, in fact between 25th and 28th December, observed that a lot of these flight diversions happened because of foggy conditions and the fact that there was a rostering problem with Air India and with SpiceJet, and asked them, gave them a show cause notice to tell them why their licenses should not be suspended if they are not able to fly into foggy terrains by way of lack of trained pilots sitting in the cockpit in a sector where there is fog. And I don't know what really came out of that reply, but this obviously is at the cusp of both a natural phenomena of fog and a technical phenomena, which is by way of instruments which are on board most aircraft to help pilots land. Now, to your third question, who pays the price? I think customers definitely pay the price when it comes to disruption of their schedules. The larger economy pays a price because most business travelers are unable to reach for their meetings, reach for their assignments in time, and hence obviously the work in the economy gets depleted multifold by these diversions and cancellations of flight. But more interestingly, even airlines pay a price for this because they are using the services of another runway, they are landing there, they are maybe paying some parking charges. There is extra fuel being burnt for every scenario that they are unable to fly. The next flight gets delayed. So overall, everybody pays a price for it. Now, the point is, fog is something that you may not be able to eliminate, but trained pilots and trained manpower ensuring that flights are able to land is something that airlines should be in a position to control. And if they are not, and if they don't have those 50 to 60% trained Cat 2, Cat 3 pilots, about time that they invest in that training for their pilots who are not Cat trained.
All right. So I think the question then one need to ask is, do airlines not have enough trained pilots for each of these flights just flying in and out of Delhi? Is there a problem with enough manpower, or is it a problem with rostering? Because if it's a problem with rostering, that can be done away
So
with.
I think the only people out there who can answer
Really
that question are the
Indian
CEOs
Airlines.
of the airlines
Of
that
course.
fly in India. And unfortunately, if they have trained pilots who are not being rostered, it is an easy to fix and a stupid thing to have not fixed thus far. But if they don't have trained pilots, it's about time that you hire trained pilots or invest in training of existing pilots to understand these new instruments.
Absolutely, and as a result of which the people who paid the price are out there currently. Some of them, I'm given to understand, are currently in Delhi airport, who are either looking to fly in or fly out. They are stranded one way or the other. Airlines continue to pay the price of it. I think a natural phenomena, foggy conditions that continue to disrupt flights in and out of Delhi, can be done away with. The problem, of course, needs to be catered to by the airlines. But with that, we've come to the end of this bulletin. Thank you very much for watching.
उन्होंने मुझे बताया था कि आप चिंता मत करो, मैं आपको भरोसा दिलाता हूँ। फिर ये मेरा परिवार सब खत्म हो गया।